Very good morning, students. Welcome back to online revision classes. The same sessions which is going to be revised onto upcoming classes. Today we'll start revising a new chapter called as classes and objects. This is revision class 1. Let us see that what are the topics we are going to cover in this particular topic. The same warning note for the students for all the revision classes. Note, this information is for the students, not to skip the videos for the betterment of the students to understand the revision concepts. First, the previous theory classes of a particular topic was being covered. Those videos will be played and followed by that revision concept on the same topic will be carried out. Now, we'll see that what are the topics we are going to cover into today's session. The topics to be covered in the revision class are definition and declaration of a classes and objects, access specifiers. In access specifiers, we have three specifiers. The first one is private, public, protect. And the third topic is the members of the classes. These are the topics which we are going to detailedly revise in this today's session. Let us see the topics in detail.
Very good morning, students. We have already discussed about a previous chapter called as basic concept of groups. Today we are going to start a new chapter called as in classes and objects. Before getting into this new chapter, we will see what is the weightage of this chapter. Here we have totally 6 marks of in this chapter. The 6 marks are being divided as 1 mark from one question and 5 marks from one question. Totally you are going to carry about a 6 marks into this chapter. Before getting into this session, we'll see that what are the topics we are going to cover in this session. Firstly, we are going to see what is classes, definition and declaration of a classes and objects, key difference between definition and declaration, general syntax of the classes declaration with an example, and also we are going to see the access specifier which is being present into a classes. Firstly, we are going to see that what is a classes. A class is a collection of an object that have identical properties, common behavior and shared relationship. Once again I repeat it, a class is a collection of objects that have identical properties, common behavior and shared relationships. And once class is defined, n number of objects of a class can be created. Class are user-defined data type. Class are user-defined data type. A class can hold both data and function. For an example, planets, sun, moon are the member of solar system. A class, we can also tell that a class binds the data and its relation functions together. Now, let us see what is class definition and declaration of a class and objects. And class definition is a process of naming a class and data variables and interface operation of a classes. We can also tell that class definition is necessarily required by the compiler to allocate the storage space for declaring entity. Majorly, the class definition is used to allocate a storage space for a declaration of an entity. When a variable is defined, it holds an amount of memory consists of several bytes for a variable. A function definition produces a code for the functions. We can also define a program element just once in a program because the definition is unique specification of a program element. The relations between the declaration and definition can be one to many. In some situation, a program element cannot be defined by declared. For an example, when function never invokes when it is declared. And another example is that in which the class definition it is not used uh, even though it is being declared. And the class definition which consists of a variable declaration inside the class known as data members. The function declared inside the class are known as member function. I repeated you, the variable declared inside the class are known as data members. The function declared inside the class are known as member function. Now we will see what is class declaration. A class declaration specifies the representation of an object of a class and set of operation that can be applied. We can also tell that a declaration is used to specify the name of the program, such as name of a variable, functions, classes, etc. No name can be used in a program without declaring. If you never declare any name in a declaration part, that name cannot be used into any of the part of a program. The program element can be declared multi times. You can also declare the program declaration name for a multi times. And multi declaration can only be achieved when the different declarations are made using the identical format. And the declaration of medium provides a visibility of a program element for the compiler. The major key difference: the declaration process is used to make the program element visible to the compiler, and it does not require to allocate the memory. Invisibly, the definition is declaration that reserve a storage. In simple words, the compiler reserve the memory space for declaring an entity in definition. This is a major difference of keywords between the definition and the declaration. We'll see the general syntax of your class declaration and definition. Here we have a general syntax of a classes. In this general syntax, we can identify the name called as a class. CLASS. Class is a keyword followed by the user defined name. The user defined name is name given to the classes. All the classes will be started by enclosing a pair of brackets or flower bracket. This pair of bracket which is to be in an open bracket which indicates the starting of a class. And how to identify the closing of a class? The close brace which consists of a semicolon which identified that is the end of a class. In this open and close bracket, we have n number of statements. That is nothing but it is a class body. We can also tell that it is a body of a class. The body of a class which is used to declare the members. We can use the declare the members like data members and member functions. Once again, I repeat, the keyword class is used to declare a class. The class is nothing but a keyword. Class, CLASS, is a keyword which is used to declare a class. And we have seen in the syntax as a user defined name. User defined name. It is a space where you are going to name the class. And class body is enclosed in a pair of flower brackets. And the flower brackets which has been opened, that indicates a starting of a class which has been started. And class body contains a declaration of members like a data and functions. Once all the declaration gets over, the class should be closed. How the class is being closed in the sense by using a close bracket with the continuation of a semicolon, and generally there are three members of a class. One is nothing but a private, public and protect. For an example, we are going to represent a bank account. Here we have a small example of creating a bank details, and I'm going to create a class called as an accounts. Account is a class name, and class is a keyword followed by different members like a private and public, and also we are going to have data members and member functions. Data members like account, number, name, class type, balance, and also we have a member function like get data and display data. This is a small class which is being created for a small account detail. Data hiding is one of the important features of object-oriented programming, which allows the functions of a programmer to access directly the internal representation of class type. The access restrictions to the class member is specified by the label called as public, private and protect section within the class body. The keyword public, private and protect are called as the access specifiers. An object is defined by an instance of a class. Every data members of is specified by three levels of access protection for hiding a data and function members internally to the class. They help in controlling the access of data members. Different access specifiers such as private, public and protect. In the next slide, we'll discuss briefly about a private, public and protect. A first access specifier is private. A private access means a member data can only access by the class member function or a friend function. The data members or member function declared a private cannot be accessed from the outside the class. The object of a class can access a private member only through the member function of a class. This property is called as an information hiding. Defaultly, all the data members in a class it's declared as a private. Example, in a private we can declare n number of data members like member functions as data members. Once you have declared any member data or member functions in a private, they cannot be accessed by outside the class. Only we have a special function called as a friend function. Through the friend function, you can access the private data. Protect. Protect access specifier act as a private. The members which is declared using a protect can be accessed only by the member functions friend of a class and also by the member functions derived from this class. We can also tell that a subclass. The member cannot be accessed from outside the class. Protect access specifier is similar to the private access specifier. Usually the data members are not declared in this part. Usually the data members are not declared in this part. The member function are usually declared in this part. The public access specifier gives an access to the member function from outside the class. This part allows the program of classes to easily change the data members of a class. In other words, it gives a flexibility of reading and writing the data members of this class from anywhere in the class. We can also declare data members in the public. but not 95% cases. The keyword public followed by the colon means that indicates the data members and member function that are visible outside the class. In other words, public access means the member can be accessed by any function outside or inside the class. The member functions can be accessed inside the class or either the outside the class. Some of the public function of a class provides an interface for accessing the private and protect member function of the class. In our next slide, we are going to see the overall topics which we have covered in this session with an example. Here, we have a small example slide to create a class for the days. Once we talk about the days, we have a different datas like day, month, year. In this slide, we are going to accept the data and display the data. Once you see the slide, the class is a keyword. Class is a keyword followed by date is a name of a class. Date is a name of a class. And the second line, which is observed by the open flower bracket. Open flower bracket of a second line of a class indicates that the class have been opened. And the last line of a class which indicates the flower bracket is being closed followed by a semicolon. That indicates that it is a closing of a class. Once it has been open, it is a starting of a class. Once it has been ended with open flower bracket followed by a semicolon, it indicates that it is a closing of a class. Inside the class open and closed flower bracket, we have n number of datas. The datas are being classified into two things, that is member functions and data members. The data members are usually indicated into the private sections. Like once you talk about days have different data like day, month and year. These three data are being initialized in the part of private, telling that int day, int month, int year. These are the three data or a variable which comes across the data members. And once you go across the public, in the public we have input data, display data. These two members are nothing but member function which is being initialized under the part of public. This is a small glance how to create a class definition and class declaration using a classes. Thank you. We'll see the next topics into a next class.
Good morning students, welcome back to online classes. So in today's session we'll discuss about a new chapter called classes and objects. Again this chapter already sir has discussed in the PPT. So this will be again a revision class for classes and objects. So in today's class I have included in the PPT like today's class the concepts to be discussed. Then what sir has done that will come first, the PPT will run first. Later this revision class then I have included the assignment part, okay. So in today's class we are going to mainly discuss about two concepts. One is class definition, declaration, syntax, and next one is access specifiers, okay. So in today's class we will discuss about these things. So first and foremost we know that why we need a programming language. So in the real-time environment, in order to put the real-time problems, the complications, if you want to resolve that, you need to bring the real-time problem into a programming language. So we need a programming language. So in C++ is one such object-oriented programming language. One such object-oriented programming language in which we use. So real-world objects can be represented by means of data variables in computer domain. So data variables are identified as your account numbers, your ATM PIN card number, etc. So for banking application, if you are preparing if you are preparing an application for banking use to maintain the details of a customer. So what could be the data available? Their account number, their customer account number, the ATM card PIN number. All these could be the data variables. So like this, if you want to bring the real-time applications to solve the real-time problem, we need a programming language. So we are using C++. Okay. So C++, how C++ is better from the traditional programming language. So we are calling C++ as object-oriented programming language. We do have procedure-oriented programming language, for example C. So there are 4 to 5 major differences between C and C++. In the procedure-oriented programming, we call it as POP, procedure-oriented programming. This we call OOPS, object-oriented programming. So in procedure-oriented programming, we call variables. In object-oriented programming, we call objects. In procedure-oriented programming, we have user-defined data types. Here we have classes. So in procedure-oriented programming, we have structure members. Here we have instance variables. There we call, in procedure-oriented programming, we call that as a functions. In C++, we call it as methods. Last but not least, in procedure-oriented programming, we have function call. Here in C++, we have message passing. Okay. Next, we see the major difference between definitions and declarations of classes and objects. Okay, now what do you mean by class definition? So there is a difference between class definition and declaration. Class definition means I have written the definition. You see, class definition is the process. It's a process of naming a class and data variables and interface the operations of the class. I repeat, class definition is the process of naming a class and the data variables as well as the interface operations of the class. We call that as a class definition. Whereas class declaration specifies the representation of objects of the class and set of operations that can be applied to such objects. So class is a combination of data variables and member functions. So data variables, what it will do, how the operations are associated with the data variable, we call it as a set of operations. So class declaration specifies the representation of objects of the class and set of operations that can be applied to such objects. Okay, this is the difference between class definition and the declaration. Next we see the definition and declarations of the class. What does it include? So we have in the class, so before getting into the general syntax of a class, we have data member and the member functions. I'll tell you what are data members. So data variables, data variables are known as member data of a class. I repeat, data variables are known as member data of a class, whereas member functions are the set of operations that are performed on the objects of the class. I repeat, data variables are known as member data of a class and member functions are the set of operations that are performed on the objects of the class. Okay. Now we'll see the general syntax. Inside a class, we know what is a class. A class is a blueprint which holds the data member and the member functions. So a class will have a keyword called class and we have a user defined name. For example, I'll tell you the example later. Class, it has a user defined name. We have these private, public, protected. These three things are called as access specifiers. I repeat, private, public, protected. Private, protected, public, these are called as access specifiers. We have member functions. We have member functions and the member data. Okay, this member data is also called as a data variable. I repeat, member data is also called as a data variable and we have member functions. These member functions are nothing but methods. So I will tell you in C++, if you learn C++, there we call it as functions. A module we call it as a function, whereas in OOPS, in object-oriented programming, in C++, we call that as the methods or functions. So here we call member functions and member data. So anything if you take, it will be private, public, protected. We have two main components. One is member data and member functions. So member data are the data variable, what I told, it tells us about the member data of a class. It tells us about the member data of a class, and here member function, it tells us the operations which can be performed on the member data of a class. For example, here I will write, this is the syntax, I will write the example, class student. If I write class student, so what are the data member and the member functions? Imagine I am giving private. Okay, private. What could be private? Imagine the account details, the fees details, I want to keep it confidential, so I am giving fees. So I want to keep the If we want to keep the name as confidential, you can give name. Before that, you need to tell the data type. These are the access specifiers. You can give, suppose, int register number, name, okay, so etc. Next we have member functions. So what could be the member functions? So the member functions, it could be get data, void get data, okay, and later we have display. So whatever data I got, I need to display. Imagine this is the class of a student. So I have name cannot be integer. So I have an array, an integer array, character array. Okay. So here int register number, character, name, so array size 10 or 15. Okay. So this is about the example. So class, it should have a user defined name. We have the access specifier. So whatever I'll tell the access specifier in detail when I discuss about the access specifiers. Next concept is access specifier only. So before that, you need to be aware of these two concepts. What is class? Those definitions, declaration, as well as the syntax, general syntax for class. Okay. So I told you we have the class and has user defined name. Inside this we have access specifier. These two things we call it as a data member and the member function. So a class is a blueprint which contains the data member and the member functions. Okay, it has the member functions. How will it define? It's a data member or the data variable that is known as the member data of a class, which describes the characteristics of the data. Okay, data member describes the characteristics of data, and member function describes about the operations that can be performed on the data variable. Okay, this is about the general syntax. Next class, I told class is a keyword. Okay, class is a keyword. Next, whatever name we give, that is a user defined name. And after ending we have curly braces. After ending, I need to enclose this with a semicolon. This is how we end the class. We end the class by using a semicolon. Okay. Next we'll see access specifiers. So students, next I told we discuss about access specifiers. So when I ask you to describe briefly about access specifier, you need to explain, you should give the definition for these three access specifiers, as well as you should explain with an example. Okay. So you need not to wait for that in the question. They may not ask you to mention with the example or describe with the example. They tell you describe briefly about access specifiers, but it is understood that you need to explain with a programming example. So I will tell you what is public, private, protected. So in the access specifiers, public, private, protected, we have default, it is private. Okay, default, if you don't give, it is private. So we have three access specifier: public, private and protected. First let me explain you about public. So when I tell it is a public access specifiers, I told you a class will have a class name. Inside the class we have data member and the member function. So int a and b, these variables, usually data members I told, those are called as data variable. So here this a and b, this is called as a data member or a member data or data member. Void getNum and show data, these two are called as member function. When you call function or method, see here we have a function call, we are closing it. See here we are closing it by the parenthesis, so hence we can identify that is a function or the method. So we have two methods. What are those? getNum and show data. These are called as member function. Int a and b is called as a member data. I repeat, this is called as your member data. Member data. This is called as your member function. Member function. So keep this in mind. We have class. Class will have a name. So class name. What is the class name? We have test. So test is your class name. Inside that I have the access specifier. Once if I tell getNum and show data as public, that means it can be accessed outside the class. See, outside the class is the main function. I am calling getNum and show data. It can be utilized. It can be accessed by using the data variable. By using the object of the class that I will tell you later. If I tell it as a public, it can be accessed outside the class. It can be accessed outside the class. If I tell the data member as a public, it can be accessed outside the class. If I tell it as a private, the next access specifier is private. If I tell it as a private, it outside the class. See here, how will I identify inside and outside the class? See here, I am just closing the class. That means my class ends. After the semicolon, if I am accessing the data member, if I could access means why? Because that's because of the access specifier public. If I want to tell it as a private, I have A and B. This cannot be accessed outside the class. Outside the semicolon, inside the class I can access, outside the class I cannot access. I repeat, what is inside the class and outside the class? Now till whatever I write within this block, before the semicolon, before you put after the brace, curly brace, you put the semicolon, whatever you write, this block of statements is called as inside the class. So we have all the statements inside the class. Even the member data, even the member function definition, you have written inside the class, but you are accessing it outside the class. So when you want to access the member data outside the class, you need to tell the access specifier as public. So private, if you do, it cannot be accessed outside the class, it can be accessed only within the class. I repeat, it can be accessed only within the class. Next is protected. Protected can be same like your public, it can be accessed outside the class, but other programs cannot access. Only within that particular block of the program we can use the protected data member. Other programs cannot access, wherein if you tell public, even other programs can access. That's the difference between public and protected. I repeat, there are three access specifiers. One is private, public and protected. If I tell anything as private, it could be mainly your data member. If I tell it as a private, it can be accessed only within the class. Outside the class we cannot access. If you want to access it outside the class, what access specifier you should give? That is public. So if you mention it as a public, it can be accessed outside the class. If you mention it as a protected, it can also be accessed outside the class, but not the other programs. The other programs cannot access the data member functions of the class. So usually what could be the private? When and all we can give, for in the best example I can give you Facebook. So in Facebook you have the option called private, public and all. So if you want all your friends to view your profile, we can give it as public. If you want it to be confidential, only your friends has to view, we can make it as private. So private means that it is assured for security reasons, we give it as private. For example, your account number, your ATM card number, your even ATM card secret number, whatever the bank people maintain in the bank database, everything is very confidential. So such cases, such data variables we cannot make it as a public. You have to make it as a private. Usually the passwords and all, it will be private only. So public means usually it will be the data member. Even the other members have to be accessed. For example, if you are putting any post or any picture, if you are making it as a public, it can be viewed by even your non-friends. So if they are mutual friends, even they can view your profile. That is because you might have given it as a public. So these are the examples, real-time examples. In the programming, we have this facility, okay, private, public, protected. Which element has to be, which data has to be shared with your friends, you can make it as public. The data which should not be shared, which is very confidential, you can make it as private. And protected, when we have both, when we want both the cases, we can give for protected. So these are about the access specifiers. So in today's class, we discussed two main concepts. One is class definition and declaration. Next, we have discussed about the access specifier. So I just brush up these two concepts, and I have given even the assignment question. You need to explain these two things, class definition and declaration with syntax. Later you have to explain the access specifier with a programming example. So here I have taken a programming example. Let me explain you this. So I have data variable A and B. Now why I need this variable? Because my task is I need to have addition of two numbers or addition of two variables I have taken. So I need a two variable to hold the number. One is A and next one is B. Get num is to read the input from the user. Show data is to display the result to the user. Okay. So in the get num, so if you want to give the definition inside the class, you can give. If you want to give separately by using scope resolution operator, we can define it outside the class too. So here for a simple example, I have defined the member function inside the class itself. So what getNum will do, enter the number of additions. Okay, enter the number of additions A and B, whatever values you enter. Suppose A value 10, B value 30 if I enter. So 10 will be stored in 20 or 30, whatever number I'll be giving, that will be stored in B. Next we have show data, that is a member function. Addition of these two numbers, here exactly the addition takes place. Here I left this. Okay, A plus B, this is the thing. Okay, A plus B, the addition of two variables, we have A plus B. Here we will have the addition and it will be displayed. Okay. Next we have here your program execution returns from the main function. Program execution begins from the main function. We have clear screen. Now what is this A1? This is nothing but creating an object. This is nothing but object of the class. Object of the class test. I repeat, what is class? I told. Class will have a class name. If I want to access any of the data member and the member function, I need to create an object. For example, if you want to pass information to your classroom, a class will have a class representative, class leader. Okay, so what teacher will do? The teacher will communicate notes or something. If ma'am wants to communicate, she'll give it to the class representative. He'll come and represent to the students, to his friends he'll come and give. Okay, similarly here if I want to access any of the private or public data members inside the class, how it could happen? It could happen only with the help of the object. Okay, by creating an object of the class, we can access the data member and the member functions of the class. So A1.getNum. How to access? By using a dot operator. First object, then the member function we have to call out the method. So what are the member function? How to identify member functions? See, you'll have parentheses. These are called as member function. Now I want to access getNum. How will you call here? A1.getNum. How to call the next member function? Show data. A1.showData. How many ever member functions we have? All the member functions without this object of the class we cannot access. Simply if you give getNum, it will not be called. You will have an error. Okay, show data if you give, it will not be called. So first you need to write the class name, then you have to create an object. Okay, here I have taken A1. So this is again a user defined. You can give anything. Yes, you can give it D, whatever. This is user defined. Here I have taken example as A1. So A1.getNum. It is not fixed. Okay, you can change. So how many objects you can create for a class? N number of objects you can create. That is also we will see in the future classes. Only A1 we can create, or A1, A2. N number of objects can be created for one particular class. So how many objects I created? One class. A1.getNum, A1.showData. Get ch is to get the output. Return 0. Why? Because I have given it as an int here. So it will return 0 to your main function. It is returning an integer value. If it's not returning anything, if you are writing, if you are removing this, here it should be void main. So this should not be a problem for you. So in the main functions, I mainly created an object and I called the member function. So what could be my output here? If I write my output, so what could be my output here? So execution begins here. So first is I am creating the object. Now by using an object getNum. So getNum, what it contains? Enter number for addition. So enter number for addition. So this is your output. Next, okay, whatever values you write, for example 20 and 30. A is containing 10, B is containing 30. Next, after this, I am calling A1.showData. See, this function call will go here. So it will execute this statement. Next, I have showData. ShowData will come here. It will execute this statement. So next, what I have? Addition of two number. See, addition of two number. I have A plus B. So A plus B, what I have? 10 plus 30. I have 40. Okay. So this is about the example for access specifiers. You can give the examples, whatever examples you are feeling comfortable, you can give that example. So this is how you have any doubts, you can put it in your assignment question. So if you want to write the other program too, you can write it. Okay. So A plus B I am adding, you can put this in a bracket too. So what is A plus B? 10 plus 30 is 40. So this is the end of your session. So remaining concepts we will discuss in the next class. Thank you.
Before getting into today's assignment questions, you people have to remember that this assignment questions are based on revision classes. Now let us see what are the assignment questions for today's session. Based on today's session, we have 5-mark questions. The first question is explain class definition and class declaration with syntax and with an example. Second question, describe access specifiers in a class. These are the two questions for today's assignment. Students, remember that these two questions are very, very important in the point of examination. Thank you.